just so you, there we go. And for anybody who, I said this earlier, but if you just joined, anybody who needs to hop off or gets called away or is just not even here yet, this will be sent out as soon as I download it and process it and send it out. And any of the documents that we share today will also be in that email. So you don't need to screenshot, you don't need to do anything, just relax and enjoy. My name is Blake Cohn, and I am the Executive Director of the National Network of Schools in Partnership. And I am really excited to be here today to talk about my favorite subject ever, which is integrating impact into the curriculum and getting this out of extras and into a full shared school community experience. I am going to turn it over to Laura and to Joyanne, who is from Wichita Collegiate, and she's going to really lead us and share the amazing transformation that she's been able to pull off in her school in 15 months, 12 months. Throughout the pandemic, she has made this change, and she should really be celebrated, but you should also know it's totally accessible to all of us to do this. So I hope that you all are able to pick up some nuggets of how to move this work forward in your school. And this is, as always at NNSP, a very open conversation. Joyanne's going to share with us. There will be plenty of time for questions, conversations, shared experiences. And if you have something that you really want to bring up, please feel free to do so after Joyanne has finished sharing the initial chunk of her material. So anyway, Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Hi, everybody. Obviously, I'm just going to double down on what Blake said about integrating this work into the curriculum. To me, it feels like more and more pressing with where we are now. I'm sure a lot of schools are kind of picking back up to where they were in terms of what we pile on our students. And that is what inspired me years ago to think, how do I get this work off of Saturdays and nights, build it into the day so it's just part of what they're into, what they're doing. So we're not adding to that stress and anxiety that all of us experience with our kids. And so that's where originally this came from. And I think it's an important thing to do, even if it's in small ways. And so I had the pleasure of knowing a lot about what Joyanne's been doing at Wichita Collegiate, and they launched an Institute for Community Impact not long ago. And I think it's always helpful to hear from schools who are in the middle of making a transition, who not long ago didn't have this going on and now do, because I think there's a lot you can learn from that. And so Joyanne is going to share kind of just, bumps, highlights, all the stuff that they've been working on with you guys. And then we'll have some time for questions, and then we'll all get to discuss those ideas too. So Joyanne Brake from Wichita Collegiate, go ahead and tell us all about what you guys have been up to.
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be a part of this talk, but also be a part of the program, because I've seen firsthand the value that this community impact work brings to our students, but then also to our community as we partner with different organizations. And I know that anybody attending this webinar right now values the type of community engagement and meaningful projects that help develop good citizens and good human beings in our students, and actually make change in our communities. And so just being able to be a part of that is really an honor for me. And so to be asked to be a part of this webinar makes me excited for all of you that are doing the same sort of work, because I imagine your communities and what you're going to do there as well. Our program is called the Institute for Community Impact, and I'm the director of that program, in addition to some other responsibilities at my school. Prior to running this program, I was in charge of community service at our school. And one of the things I saw lacking in our students was just showing up to volunteer events for the sake of their resume or just to fulfill their hours, but not necessarily going deeper with understanding the needs in the community or the organizations that we were even trying to help. So that was a problem that I had seen, and it wanted me to move forward. In addition to that, we had a parent get involved that really was encouraging a leadership academy. This is for our juniors and seniors, where we bring in community speakers and leaders, and we have been developing shadowships for our students, our seniors, this year. Those two ideas came together when we wanted to promote what Hockaday was doing to our head of school. And so around this time, and it was the summer before COVID had hit, so that would have been the summer of 2019, we started thinking, dreaming, and planning. And as we shared ideas with the head of the upper school, particularly for our upper school students, there was a lot of support, but it just was not taking off. Really what helped it take off was seeing the Institute of Social Impact at Hockaday School. And someone had shared their video about the work they were doing. And once I had shared that with our head of school said that's the type of work collegiate should be doing for our students and also for our community. Develop a team and get it started. So I really have to say that the inspiration coming from another school and having it tangible, like seeing the actual examples, knowing what could be done, inspired my team, but also our whole school. And so once we presented to the head of school, then it took off. And the reason I really spend time on that is I don't think you can really make this a full scale program until you have the head of school on board and supporting it, because that not only ties into the teacher buy-in, but also to the resources that you might need, but also talking to the school board. All of that is really necessary. We actually partnered with Laura Day. I didn't actually know her. What happened was we watched the video. We said, Collegiate needs to be doing this. This is the type of work we should be doing. By that time, I'd been teaching a middle school class called Values in Action class, and it was centered around partnering with community organizations, understanding the needs in our community, and setting up volunteer events for middle schoolers. But it was small in the sense it only touched a handful of students. So I knew from hearing from my students, the value of the work as their empathy grew for these organizations and the needs, that we needed to make this whole school. And our head of school agreed with that as well. What we did was during COVID, when we were having faculty meetings weekly on Zoom, sitting in our backyards or wherever, the head of school introduced the idea. He said, we want to start this new Institute of Social Impact. We're learning from Hockaday how they do it. If you're interested, why don't you join Joy-Ann and Laura Day on a Zoom meeting on this date, if it's something that inspires you. I talked a little bit about it. I showed the Hockaday's 3-minute video. And then at that meeting, we had between 40 and 50 teachers in attendance on Zoom, and we heard from Laura. After that, we were able to hire Laura as a consultant for a certain number of hours. And during that summer, which was the summer of 2020, Laura and I met by Zoom in small groups, and it would be 1 or 2 teachers for every 30 minutes. And so as teachers were wondering, how can I make this real for my classroom? Can I even do this at all? It was really Laura's expertise that helped them not only buy in, but make it real, make it seem like they could accomplish this. And so we met throughout that summer and into the early fall. I would say that speaking with every type of colleague was important. So for example, Laura and I met by Zoom with our head of the divisions. We met with our college counselors. I mentioned we met with teachers who expressed interest. And then we also met with our division counselors who kind of wanted to see how this could tie into SEL and DEI work. How could this really be embraced as a whole school initiative? In the fall of 2020, then our head of school made it one of our new all school initiatives. And one of the things that he suggests, and I would suggest, would be making sure the board is aware of it and what it is early on. So one of the hurdles that we faced was, as we were getting all of our staff on board and people were getting excited about the idea, the school board was kind of in the dark about what this is. And there was a little bit of controversy or uncertainty. So for example, the idea of bringing in an Institute of Social Impact raised the question, is it socialism? And that was because there was just some ignorance on what this program was. And that would be a responsibility of mine or yours to spell out what the program actually is. So we changed our name to the Institute of Community Impact in order to answer that question. And the way it is broken down is complex. One thing that has helped all of our staff and all of our parents and all of our board to understand what the program is by creating a graphic. And so I'm going to ask Blake to put that in the chat. This graphic spells out what our Institute of Community Impact is. And as you look at that, I'm going to open that as well. What you're going to see is how I explain the program. What's really important for you to know and for all your teachers to know are the outcomes you want in your students. That's at the top of this graphic. And we largely got our ideas again from Hakkaday's successful program. We might have changed a few words, but we had the same outcomes we want in our students, because as I mentioned, one of the things that I know you are excited about is the type of student we can build for the future as they grow in empathy and advocacy, problem solving, exploring their purpose and their real world experience. So this graphic helps me explain that. And then it explains how it's broken down by division so that each grade level pre-K through 8 has a theme and they run with that theme. And they try to develop curriculum or they tie it to something they're already doing and taking it deeper so that their students finish a school year really feeling like they understand the needs in their community about homelessness or refugees, the organizations that help those needs, and then how they as students can make a difference. And so each grade level would tie in a community impact project, such as a donation drive or some sort of advocacy. And our upper school functions differently, just because we can't put it in every class. There's not grade level themes, but there are teachers who have adopted some of the work. Finally, those pillars that you see, service learning, community service, community engagement, social entrepreneurship, that also falls under this umbrella of Institute for Community Impact. I've shared this graphic so many times. Yesterday, I shared it as I was talking to lower school again about taking their projects just a little further this year. And again, it's like, well, what is this program? We kind of can't remember. This graphic kind of answers most of their questions. So I'd really recommend creating some sort of graphic. And so moving on, I want to talk about some other hurdles that you might face as you create community impact work. Teachers don't want more work. They don't want one more thing. And this became really evident during COVID. And even this year too, why are you making us do one more thing? Again, it's the idea that teachers repurpose what they're already doing. Many teachers already do some sort of good project for the community. They have curriculum they're already doing. They could find a community impact theme that would fit nicely, and that could be something they develop further based on what they're already doing. When you saw the graphic, you saw themes that teachers chose for themselves. I'd say the most successful community impact themes and projects were ones that were team-led, meaning the teachers got together and decided what theme they wanted to focus on. 6th grade had already been doing some sort of volunteer work with a local school that had a lot of refugees attending. And so they decided they wanted to go with the refugee theme. A way that they incorporated the outcomes that you saw at the top of that graphic, they started by using their literature class to read books. They chose 2 new books based on the experience of some refugee children. And then the English class did writing. They did 2-person poems where they, after empathizing with the experience of a refugee, created these 2-person poems about the experience a refugee might face. They performed those 2-person poems in our auditorium where teachers and parents could attend. And since it was COVID, I think they shared the video. In their social studies class, the teacher had them study the statistics of refugees leaving countries and then understanding the reason why they might have to leave. They created maps of what a refugee journey would have looked like And then finally, their advocacy piece was they took their class funds and they bought wish list items last year during the holidays for refugee families in our community. It's important to say that we had partnered with the International Rescue Committee. And one of the beautiful things about these projects is we're not going into it saying, you know, here's what we think you need. We're going to do our good deeds. Here you go. When we partner with them, they tell us what they need. And so the International Rescue Committee came to the 6th grade and talked about what the organization does. 6th grade also brought in somebody who was living here on asylum, and they heard firsthand experience. Their project was based on what International Rescue Committee said they needed. And that's really important. Also, as we had a younger grade that was working with food insecurity, and they had done composting so they could enrich the soil to grow the gardens that would grow produce that they could give to a rescue mission serving the homeless, where they serve meals. They found out what is it that the Union Rescue Mission needs in terms of their food, and they were growing that. So I would just really emphasize, when you partner with local organizations, hear from them, let their leaders come in to be your real world experience speakers, so that it's a true partnership. It's not just benefiting our students, but it's also benefiting our community. And you're going to get the feedback from those organizations about the value of your work as well. Another important thing that happened, and this was just kind of coincidence or the universe affirming this, I don't know. But during the time of trying to promote this, and this, again, the summer of 2020, our school is in the process of reworking the mission statement. And our head of school had already endorsed the program, and he really wanted us to move forward with it. And as they were considering a new mission statement, they included the idea of what community impact work could do. And so our school's mission statement that was created around the same time we were launching this program, the school's mission statement is to inspire every student to be the best version of themselves and empower them to lead lives of impact in their community and in their world. So that's our school's mission statement. Anytime I talk about this program to the board, or maybe I even talk about it to local speakers and leaders, I can point to the fact that it ties into our school mission statement. The board is essential. And I had already mentioned about making sure the board you get buy-in from the board early on, so they understand what the work actually is, but then you can use their connections in the community. All the teachers that got excited about community impact work said, okay, I'm really excited about this, but I don't have the connections in the community. I have had, I'd say, 1 or 2 key board members who were so excited about the program. They did so much legwork for me, kind of without me even asking. So when it came to getting speakers for our Leadership Academy for juniors and seniors, and even connecting with the heads of nonprofits, it started with one particular board member I'm thinking of who sits on their boards of these nonprofits, and she could make the ask for me. And we've had so many of our speakers and connections happen that way. Your board is your asset. So you want to make sure they understand the program, get them excited. That does mean you have to go talk to them, which you will want to because you're excited about the program. And your head of school will have to get that set up. So you want your head of school on board as well. Our head of school had made some suggestions of what I should share with you as well. Aside from getting the board buy-in early on, keeping it separate, keeping the program separate from parent involvement in the sense of anybody having a leadership role. They are our resources and they are the ones we serve. But we did have an instance where there was too much authority maybe given to a parent. Because of drama between parents, it affected the perception of the program. So based on our experience, we would recommend that. Also, our head of school had said, get a Pied Piper. That's you. You keep talking about it. You get excited about it. You talk about the value of the work. You talk to whoever you can, which is going to happen naturally because you understand the value to the students and to the community that you care about. He also mentioned student voice, particularly in the upper school. with our Leadership Academy, and also in a class which was the government class where students could choose a community impact project, letting students have a voice about the organizations they want to find out about and advocate for is really key to help the students get excited, since we are building these future leaders, since they're the ones we want to develop these outcomes in. Student voice is important. And I could talk more about that if you want me to a little later. But those are some things our head of school said to make sure I share with you. My final thing was to just talk about some of the tangible projects that we've been doing. And I think I'm going to start with the most exciting ones now, and then I'll work backwards as to what some of our key projects were last year. And I'm just going to again say, we've only been doing this 1 year. Last year was introduced to the staff to say, here's our new initiative. Now get on board. The upper school, our head of the school said, this is important work. Please get involved. It depended on which teachers were most excited and felt like they could tie it into their curriculum. It's grown so much. I will say, when I saw Hackaday's 3-minute video about their social impact program, I mean, yes, it was a marketing tool to get our people on board, but in my head, I'm like, I don't know if we can ever really do all of that. But after a year, I know we could, and that makes me really excited. Most recently, we've had somebody from our community. It's actually a parent who, she and her husband run a hospice business. He is the physician and she's the administrator. And she came to me saying, I know you do this community impact work. Would you be willing to do some projects that would help our elderly that are facing end of life care? They might be on hospice or they might be nursing home residents. And one thing she asked for, which we are so excited about, she asked if our upper school art students would be willing to do artwork, create artwork on the theme of hope. And she said they have a therapy room where they are counseling families who are grieving or people who have been put on hospice. People are facing the end of life. And she'd like her therapy room to have some of our students' artwork on the theme of hope. She asked if our upper school students would write poetry about hope, and she was willing to hardbind a book such as that and put in that therapy room. So of course I reached out to the art teacher in the upper school who's thrilled. She said, I'm super busy, I'll do it second semester, but I would love to be a part of this. I reached out to our English teachers and had several respond that want to do poetry about hope. Again, I'm going to point out that the organization came to us and said, this is actually very beneficial for the elderly facing the end of their life. They asked if our younger students could become pen pals with nursing home residents. Our first grade has the theme of elderly. They're going to become the pen pals. They made handmade ornaments for the holidays. There were Thanksgiving crafts for the nursing homes for the elderly that had no place to go for Thanksgiving. And on the tables are our first grade crafts set along the tables, and the response was huge. They said that the elderly were thrilled. I might not have known it would have mattered that much, but the hospice administrator came to me and said, this is very valuable. Please ask your students to do this. That's something that's just been really exciting to me most recently. But looking back to last year, I will say that there's a video that Blake can share in the chat that summarized our program last year. And I used it at the end of the school year to say to the teachers, first of all, thank you, but here's the work we did last year for community impact. Knowing that this coming year, 21-22, we were going to ask teachers to do a little bit more. Our most effective projects are, you'll see on that video. And I mentioned the refugee one for 6th grade. 5th grade chose the theme of homelessness. So they partnered with a local organization. And again, they started by reading books. I can't emphasize enough the resources that are already around you. Our librarian said she wishes she was used more for this type of work. And so as soon as I heard her say that, and I'm hearing the valuable projects our teachers are doing, I'm hearing it starts with empathy through a book. Like, use your librarian. They probably will be excited about this type of work. Going back to that 5th grade, they started with reading about homelessness. And then they met with our homeless outreach team, which is a police a division of our police department dedicated to homelessness in our community. We didn't even know they really existed. And so they came to our school. They talked to the fifth graders. They told them about the work they do. And we also heard from Humankind Ministries, a local homelessness organization, and they told the fifth graders what they need. And one of those things was they could use hats. So every fifth grader last year learned how to knit hats. We have pictures on that video of our fifth graders knitting hats that they were able to give to the organization that hands it out to the homeless. Our upper school also partnered with a donation drive for other basic needs for homelessness with the same organization. Those are two key projects that were really successful last year, and both of them were successful because the teachers were excited about it, or at least one person on the team was excited about it. And once they got the idea going, it made a difference for the other teachers on the team. I could talk more about some other projects if you want me to, or I could pause and Laura Day can tell me what to do next.
Yes, pause. Let me
Okay.
say this to everyone, because I think it's so nice to have a school talk. None of this was going on before.
No.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was nothing to now this. And I also will brag on the school in the sense that they were just got an accreditation from their accrediting body. And this was one of the 2 or 3 things that was highlighted as one of the like biggest things the school's doing, right? So this school went from not really doing a lot of this, though, caring about it, to now having it be kind of like a signature program that's infused. And so just when Joyanne shares about where it's gone, I just like to have this work feel like it's doable, because sometimes it feels like, oh my God, that's so much. But Joyanne, was able to do that. And Joyanne was a teacher and kind of the director of community service while doing this. And I think showed proof that this role needs a little more of a person involved. And that's now they're letting her do that, which is helpful. I will ask if anyone has questions. And I also have a question for Joyanne that I think is helpful for you all, because there were grade levels that were not receptive. And there were people who were not receptive, which we all run into, which we all don't talk about much. But Joyanne can talk maybe quickly about how she helped maybe get those grades interested, or what she did when there was a grade that looked at her and was like, I don't think that fits. We don't, or they didn't agree. And there were definitely those moments. And so Joyanne, if you can speak maybe to one of those, that might be helpful to people, I imagine, because that's something that happens all the time. And I know we all run into it.
Yeah. This is being recorded. I will be thoughtful in how I talk about it, but there was one grade level that maybe because of time commitment, didn't feel like they really wanted to develop the work very much. What has changed, and I'm going to say they're a leader this year in the project they're developing. What changed was celebrating the other work that was being done. And that happened through our social media posts as this work was being celebrated. It happened at faculty meetings when the work of the other grade levels was being celebrated and commended, and then hearing from local organizations. That definitely helped. I had been pushing in a lot, asking not only how can I help, but could I do this? Could I make this connection for you? Could I make this connection for you? And just keeping at it. At first, there wasn't a lot of response. This year, it has really developed to probably be one of our best projects. And I know it's because of the teacher buy-in. And they probably also felt a little embarrassed that they weren't highlighted as one of the most effective community impact teams. But we also know it was COVID year. Everybody felt overwhelmed. And so we started, and even our head of school said, we've got to give them space. Every division head said, okay, let's push this. Let's say this is our new initiative, but let's give each grade level team room to develop it. And next year, which is now 21-22, is when we will expect a little more. So there was a lot of grace given. But I will say that celebrating the early adopters, celebrating the work that's being done, not just from the perspective of, look how great the teachers are, but hearing from the students the value of the work when I talk about the refugee project, it was the students telling their parents how impacted they were by what they were learning and how proud of the donation drive they had, because they knew the families they would be able to support. Hearing from the students, and then the parents are really excited, and then our board is really excited. So being able to celebrate that made a big difference. Also, I can say that our head of school supported this from the start. It wouldn't have launched without him. Each division head also needs to support it in a way that has expectations of the teachers. And depending on the reminders by the division heads, will produce the results you do or don't get. So yes, each division has different amounts of maybe pushback or feeling like this is one more thing, but it is the division heads that also need to be on board, because the head of school has said so, and believe in the value of the work. And they do, they typically do, but it's just if it's a busy time and the teachers give a little bit of pushback, then it's our job to help solve that by offering the solutions and by offering the connections and doing a lot of the work for them. I hope that answers that question.
Awesome. That's awesome. Other people, questions, thoughts? Anything you'd want to ask? Any specifics? Yeah, Susan.
Joanne, can you talk a little bit more about the timeline, specifically like when you, like initially, like it was you, the head of school and the division directors, and then to,
Yeah.
I'm missing the like, because I'm currently like working on this myself. And starting it small, but I'm just trying to figure out, it sounds, I'm doing it like one grade at a time. And I think that your way is much better. So I'm just trying to figure out that piece.
Yeah. If it's going to be an all school initiative, I'd say start with the head of school and celebrate the little pieces. So the timeline is, I had started talking about it in the fall of 2019 and got support from division heads that I talked to, thought it was a good idea, but then nothing was happening. So it was spring 2020 when it was a little more of a formal presentation to the head of school saying, like, look at the opportunity for an initiative or a program like this. Let me show you what Hockaday School is doing. And it was at that meeting, and when we shared the video of what could be, that our head of school said, why aren't we already doing this? And he was new to our school. He'd been there a year, or that was his first year. Why isn't Collegiate already doing this? This is meaningful work for our students in our community. We should already be doing this. He said, go ahead and get a team together. And I think that it might have been February or March of 2020. So months after trying to promote it, I had permission to put the team together. And I just asked teachers I knew from the different divisions that would be on board with this, that would support this. And so we started planning. And then we brought in Laura for a formal presentation to the whole school in May. So started talking about it as a team in March, finished out the school year on Zoom, and brought Laura into a Zoom meeting, invited teachers who thought the work could be meaningful. And then optionally, they came to that meeting with Laura and myself in May. And then throughout that summer, and this would be summer 2020, we met in the small groups, and it was for a total of probably that summer is probably a total of 11 hours, which meant 22 30-minute sessions with Laura, myself, and the teachers that were interested in adding this to their class. And so then in the fall 2020, it was announced, this is now a new initiative of our school. We're going to do this. Teachers, start somewhere and take it as far as you can. Still at that point, I didn't know what teachers were going to do, but the 6th grade refugee theme, that team took off. I mean, they in September had it all developed. They were our earliest adopter, going like full force ahead. And we could start celebrating that. Like by the time the holidays happened, here was this amazing project tied to community impact work. And I really think that had a snowball effect, because other teachers who really cared about the work now saw that it was possible and saw a tangible way of putting it in their curriculum. Does that help?
Yeah, so the expectation was that in last year's school year, it was like sort of teacher choice, let's try to do this. And now it's expectation is that this is part of every grade level.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Minus the upper school, which functions a little differently. And I could talk about that if you want. They don't have grade level themes, but pre-K through 8 does.
Other questions before we do some breakouts? Yes, hello.
Hi. So I'm curious, I loved the hospice partnership you shared that was presented by a parent. I've had the experience though, where parents suggest things that just simply don't fit, or at least right now. So I'm curious, any suggestions on how to navigate those conversations when obviously they have an established relationship with the school, or if that's, a teacher suggestion or a student suggestion, not simply limited to parents, how you navigate those things that where you want people to be engaged, but it's just not the right time or theme. That'd be helpful.
Yes.
Megan, every single person's head is like, when you ask that question. Sorry, Joanne, go ahead.
Well, I learned from my friend Laura Day how to handle this. So Laura was a consultant for our school, but I was able to meet with her personally on things like this. And this worked. She said, okay, you see if it fits within one of your themes or something that's already being done, or could it work for a community service event which I'm in charge of anyways? And then if it doesn't, you just politely say, it's a great idea. It doesn't work within our school as within the curriculum now, but can I suggest maybe you could promote it in some way outside the school? And I'm going to give an example. In our upper school, where we do have a student-led, it's called the Student Forum, and they promote community service events after sharing with the whole student body the meaning behind the event, the organization they're assisting, and then we're holding an event. Well, as you can imagine, there's many students who want to promote different donation drives or events, but we don't have room for all of that. And so one thing that Laura had said, and this has worked, is when I've had to say to a student, okay, we're not able to add another donation drive because actually our school limits our donation drives. Our head of school really pushes for sweat equity, figure out ways to partner with an organization that involves sweat equity instead of just asking for parents' money. And I don't put it like that with the students, but I really encourage them to promote on their social media and either hold their donation drive outside of school or with their friends, or do the event with their group of friends outside of school. It doesn't have to go through the school, but we also don't want to shut it down. And so being able to say, this doesn't fit, but I think it's a great idea. Here's maybe how you could promote it outside of our school, at least shows that we affirm the idea, but we're not the place that can deliver it. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Joanne, tying to that, do you have community service clubs and different groups that are, one of the things we're struggling with this year is getting our arms around activities that are being planned by kids. And there's no, it's kind of like we find out about it when there's a flyer. And so I'm wondering how you manage those things, and also how, if you have pre-existing events, you also manage the community service events. Are you bringing those under the same with this, how do you fortify them with the same outcomes?
Yeah. So the way we operate community service events, it is through the school. Students would not be allowed to randomly host within the school without oversight. We have to have oversight. It starts in the upper school. There's a club, and students had to, students did not apply this year. This year, I actually asked previous students, who would you recommend? Who's willing to do the work? I don't want kids just showing up to add it to their resume, kids who are willing to work. We meet as a club about every 2 weeks, and it does start from them. What are the things you care about? Who are the organizations you care about? And now let's see if we could create some sort of event or project with a partnership with that organization. It starts with them, but then I have to have oversight. And even though they're doing some of the work, so am I. I'm making sure that we have the community partner. I'm communicating with them. I'm the one setting it up. But I give a lot of room for the students to initiate it and get it started. And that impacts the middle school because those events often can be as a partnership between upper school and middle school. Kids have to sign up, and I'll usually do that through Google Forms. And one thing I failed to mention is the biggest help for me as the community service coordinator starting last year is Mobile Serve app or website. You want to check them out because it's a place students can log in all their volunteer hours. And I did learn about this from Laura. They log in all of their volunteer service hours. Middle school has a requirement of 5 hours, but it has to be logged in Mobile Serve. We just this year told upper school students, if you're going to add this to your college resume, it has to be in Mobile Serve. And that's a way for us to track the volunteering our students are doing. So, not all of it is through the school. Many students have a certain passion and they do it outside of school hours. And we're proud of that, but we still ask them to put it in Mobile Serve so that we know it's there. And we know there's a contact person. If our college counselors wanted to verify anything. And so our college counselors think Mobile Serve's really important. They added the extra aspect of having students, when they're filling out their hours, answer the question, what did you find meaningful about this project, or what really stood out to you? The reason our college counselors asked us to add that is so that when students, juniors or seniors, are writing their college essays, they can draw from their community experience and recall, like, oh yeah, I guess in 8th grade, I did care about that organization, and freshman year, here's what I had to say. And it could build into a college essay or understanding themselves, if that makes sense. Finally, Mobile Serve also allows for pictures to be uploaded. And I shared with Laura, one of the things I'm not good at is sharing photos of the community service projects and events and sharing it with our social media person at school. Laura made the suggestion of, okay, how about you assign somebody who's at your event to say, will you take the photos and will you send it to this person who's been waiting for the photos? So that's something I've not been doing, but I'm going to get better at. Mobile Serve is a place students can upload their photos as well. And so I need to keep reminding the students of that as well. We're going to get better. We're already better this year than we were last year. But that's, again, on the theme of community service. What else can I elaborate on with that?
I think if there aren't any other questions, maybe Blake, we have about 5 minutes. Do you think we should? Yeah. So we're gonna, thank you, Joanne, obviously, wonderful, very helpful. It's always nice to hear someone's journey and how much success you guys have had. It's really impressive. We were gonna let people talk to each other because that's such a valuable part of this hour, I always think, to learn from each other and hear from what everybody's doing. So Blake is going to put a question in the chat. Yes, she is. She didn't know that. Impromptu, Blake. The question is going to be what that you just heard from around Wichita Collegiate, what they're doing. Is there anything you can pull from or use in your day-to-day, or are there any things that were sparked in this conversation? And if there's anything else you want to share with each other, like if you get together and you're like, oh my gosh, how are you guys handling this? Because it's like hard or whatever, because that's, I think there's a lot we have going on. So use that time for this. So we're just going to have 2 groups for about 5 minutes just to have that time so you can kind of connect with each other, and then we'll bring everybody back and just wrap up. But I think it's super valuable to use each other. So we'll all jump into those rooms.
My clock says 12:46, so I'm thinking 12:53. Is that good?
Beautiful.
7 minutes.
I love 12:53.
It's the kind of number schools like. Okay, see you all in your rooms. And when I share the video and the 2 documents that I put in the chat, I also already texted Laura to share the video that Joyanne was referring to at the beginning. That was sort of the inspiration. So you all can have all of those different components. I'm not suggesting that you all have to run to your head of school's office and share that video, but just to get an idea and to have it, because we believe at NNSP that no one should have to reinvent the wheel, that we should all just be sharing this and making all of our schools as strong as possible. Are we back? We're back. How
We're
is everybody?
back. Hello, everyone. Is there anything like pressing that anybody feels like they should share to everyone before we leave each other? That you think it would be beneficial, or some reflection or thought you had? We'd love to hear from you.
Joyanne, part of our conversation in our breakout room was how unbelievably impressive it is what you've managed to pull off in 18 months to 2 years. And we're certain, I'm speaking on behalf and ask no permission, but I'm certain that no one at your school is walking around telling you what an amazing feat you've pulled off. So just know that the people that understand what this work looks like recognize what you have done. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I'm just excited for more programs like this around the country, because it's going to really affect the communities we live in, and the students that we're developing are going to be the leaders that keep this with them as they grow. So I'm just excited for everybody else to get going. Yeah.
Well, you're preaching to the right choir for
I know.
sure. And NNSP really, I was saying in our room that we do not believe in reinventing the wheel, and we really rely on you all for sharing your stories, the good parts and the challenges, right? And the areas of opportunity, because that's how we're all going to be able to move this work forward in our schools. The more of our schools that are doing this work, obviously the better, exactly what you said, Joyanne, the better the communities that we all are living in, the better leaders that we have in the future. So it's really inspiring, and I'm always grateful that on year 19 of this pandemic, you all are still logging into Zoom to share this work and think about how you can improve the opportunities for your students and for your communities in general, your families, your alums, your teachers. Anyway, I'm super grateful. I will share everything with you. I mentioned to my group, I asked Laura to send me the copy of the video that Joyanne was mentioning at the beginning, just so you can have all the parts and take them and use them and share them as you need. And if anybody has any other resources that they think would be helpful, please send them my way. We love to share out things that make things easier. And Bridget, I have something for you. I was looking for it when we were talking, but there was 2 webinars ago, somebody had made a form for fundraising events that sort of filtered out extraneous ideas so the kids had to go through a process in order to do a fundraising community service event on campus. I will send that to you all. Okay. Laura, you have anything else?
No, does anyone have anything else?
No.
Awesome. Thanks again to Joyanne. That was really helpful. And hopefully you are inspired, and I'm sure you're all doing wonderful work at your schools. And obviously we're always available, any of us. And maybe Joyanne, do you want to pop your email in the chat real quick? Because I know some people wanted to follow up with you. And then most of you know how to find Blake or myself. And if you don't, you know how to find Blake. Blake can find
Yes.
me. So that's good if that's helpful. So thanks for your time. I hope everybody has a great rest of and makes it through December. I think that's all we're trying to do. Holy cow, there's a lot going on right now for our world. So keep it up. And thanks for everything. And hope you guys have a good rest of the week and weekend.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Okay, you were so good.
Okay.
You
I
were
just
so
have to watch.
good.
What a hero, Joyanne. You're like the poster child now.
Did
Well,
you look
I
at the
like
chat?
I didn't look at the chat. I was looking
It's-
at my notes.
It was like, this was so worthwhile. This was
Most
amazing.
helpful thing
Thank you so
ever.
much.
So valuable.
Good.
Yeah, this
Go
was
tell your head of school that, Joyanne. Tell your head of school how well it went.
I'm
Here,
gonna
I'm
go
gonna
find them. he was very excited that you were going to allow me to speak on this, but it makes me interested. Like our school still is not a member of NNSP. Is that correct? Like, what do we
No,
need
yeah.
to do?
It's a $750 a year membership
Guess
fee.
what? I'm going to ask for it our next budget request for next year, because
Awesome.
it's not just my work. It's like everybody else's work.
Well, yeah, all your teachers. So with $750, your entire community, your board, your teachers, your like everybody. I know I said teachers and faculty, so just
Do it
forgive me.
everything.
But everybody belongs, so they can come to anything that they want to. So, and all of this is free for members.
Okay. How could what would you suggest to help promote the idea?
I have a one pager that I can send you, but
Yeah.
really it's for you in particular, it's putting your work on a national stage. So it not only will you and your teachers benefit from all the other schools, but we will promote a la this, your work, so that Wichita Collegiate becomes a leader, a known leader in this work. And Laura has benefited from putting it out on a national stage. This institute, there's a school in California called Hillbrook School. They've really worked that angle because it's part of their strategic plan. But really also it allows your teachers to come and hear what other classroom teachers are doing in their classrooms, so that they sort of think outside the box.
Yeah. And they're always looking for that. And it's
Yeah,
And we're doing like in January, we're doing stuff about like how you marry the DEI work with this. So it's like adding in all these layers of how it's really just an integral part of every school's operations.
I feel like if they don't pay for it, I should just pay for it, because I feel like I would benefit so much.
You personally,
Nathan will pay for it. I mean, I think it'll totally go
your
with
school
the
here's the thing, that $750 will get paid for with just one board member seeing that you're getting national recognition.
Yeah. How should I promote the fact that our school was able to present on this webinar? What should I
Tell
do?
Nathan, and then write up a thing and send it to your communications director and say that you presented at a national webinar. And then that way, early on and years ago, when I started doing this kind of thing, they push it out every so often, because it looked really good for our school, that our school was actually talking to people. And I think your school will appreciate that. It just continues this momentum you have. And I would do that.
Okay.